Good afternoon, everyone. How you all doing today? Yeah, all right. I like that enthusiasm. Thank you so much for coming to our first session of What Matters to Me and Why. We're beginning our 13th year. And I just met someone who was a student here when we started in 2001. She was one of the first students who actually organized What Matters to Me and Why, and she's come back after 13 years. I just want to welcome Sylvie. Is she there? Yes, thank you. This is your legacy, so thank you. Yes. So how many people are here for the first time? Anyone? Great. So please grab some lunch, and this is something we do every month. We do 8 of them a year. This is our 13th year, and so it's really nice to have you at this particular event, and we hope you come for future What Matters to Me and Why as well. We have a great lineup this year, this semester. Rob Asghar, Rafael Angulo from the USC School of Social Work, Vincent Vigil, the director of the LGBT Resource Center, and Andrea Hollingshead, professor at the Annenberg School. So hopefully you'll be able to join us for all of those events. And I just want to shamelessly plug a few events before I introduce our speaker today. We have a lot of great events this semester at the Office of Religious Life and also at the Levin Institute for Humanities and Ethics. Please go to our websites to find out more information or sign up for our newsletter in the back. This year we're launching an Intro to Christian Spirituality class. It's open to the public. It's not for credit. It meets every Tuesday at 5 p.m. at the University Religious Center with Reverend Jim Burklow. We also are launching a program called Sojourner, which is our interfaith leadership training program for undergraduates who want to do a semester of training and be certified in interfaith leadership. Please come speak to us at the Office of Religious Life. We're kicking it off this semester. On September 9th at the Crusoe Catholic Center, we're hosting an event called The Face of Immigration and Catholic Teaching with leaders from both the Catholic community and the immigration communities, immigration advocacy communities in Los Angeles. On October 2nd, we're hosting Denis Mukwege, who's a really world-renowned peace activist and a physician from the Democratic Republic of Congo. He's done extraordinary work supporting and treating women who have been victims of sexual assault in the Congo. He's won like every major peace award. And what's amazing is October 7th, we're hosting him. He's been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize this year, and they're announcing the Peace Prize that morning. So you could have the opportunity to see Denis Mukwege at USC on the day that he wins the Nobel Peace Prize. And 3 other events that we're doing with Spectrum. They're all on the USC Spectrum website. They're all book events. On October 18th, we're hosting Richard Dawkins, the well-known public atheist, for a book talk at Bovard. On October 21st, we're hosting Pir Zia Inayat Khan, a great Sufi leader. His grandfather was Hazrat Inayat Khan. And on October 24th, we're hosting my friend Reza Aslan, who had the #1 book in the country this summer, Zealot. You may have seen his infamous Fox News interview. We're hosting him for a book talk on Zealot on October 24th. Normally, we have students introduce our speakers, but I'm going to break the tradition for the first time since I've been here. It's my 6th year. I'm going to introduce the speaker today because I know Rob probably better than any student. He's like a brother from another mother. And so I'm really excited to be able to introduce him today. It's amazing to me that Rob has been working at USC for 30 years because he only looks like he's 35. So he started working at USC when he was a freshman here, and this is his 30th year at USC. I think he got his first job in USC media, and he's kind of worked in that domain for most of his career here at USC. He's currently a special advisor to the president, which means he has this amazing snapshot of a university on the move. So a lot of the public events that we see in terms of the university life, he kind of gets the behind-the-scenes view of all of that. So he has kind of this remarkable role at the university where he's seen it over time in very difficult and also very triumphant situations. He's a writer. He has his publications have been, his writings have been featured in over 30 newspapers around the world. He's a regular contributor at Forbes. His first book was called Lessons from the Holy Wars, Pakistani-American Odyssey. And his next book is coming out by USC's Figueroa Press, probably at the end of this year. It's called Leadership is Hell. And he draws on his experiences working with Steve Sample and Warren Bennis and Simon Ramo. So it should be a really interesting book. And the other thing that I found interesting about Rob is that I didn't think there was a bigger Led Zeppelin fan than me. When I was in high school, I was like obsessed with Zeppelin. I went to a boarding school, and we had this altar where we like worshipped at the altar of Jimmy Page, and maybe that was the beginning of religious life for me. my friends and I, who were all blues guitar players, even contemplated going to the crossroads at midnight and selling our souls to the devil so we could play blues guitar like Jimmy Page, and we'd listen to Led Zeppelin recordings backwards. And I thought I knew everything about Zeppelin until I met Rob, who's like a real Zeppelin fanatic. The Hammer of the Gods is strong with this one. And he started talking to me about shows like, oh, did you ever hear that 1973 show from Wisconsin? I'm like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. So he's a really, and not so much in the closet anymore, but he's a really hardcore Zeppelin fan. So if anyone wants to talk to him about that, I'm sure he'd be interested in having that conversation. Before I bring Rob on, I just want you to know we're doing something different this time. We have microphones in the front. So when we go to Q&A, please just come to the front and ask your question directly in the microphone so we can get it on video and everyone can hear you. That being said, please join me in welcoming our friend and colleague to What Matters to Me and Why, Rob Asghar.
Thank you, Varun. And in my first book, I did acknowledge both Varun and Led Zeppelin, probably in that order. It's great to be able to work with Varun. I think more and more people here are finding out more about the kind of role he plays in the life of this university. What you've got here is perhaps the world's most globally diverse academic community, and Varun plays a key role in bringing cohesiveness and unity and mutual respect and tolerance, at times with a lot of headaches that are involved, but it's a pivotal role he plays. When he's not here, he's off at a major interfaith breakfast at the White House or some other national event. I think a lot of us are gonna someday look back and say, when we see Varun move on in his career, we'll say, I knew Varun way back when he was at USC, when he was humble, when he didn't take a limo everywhere. And in the meantime, though, he's doing incredible service to this academic community. And it's good to be here in Ground Zero, this very cheerfully named coffee house. I want to just cut to the chase and say, look, let's talk about what matters to me and why. What matters to Rob Asghar and why? The very fact that I'm speaking in the third person probably tips you off that I'm something of a narcissistic blowhard. So what matters to me is success and recognition. Why? I just told you I'm a narcissist. So I also happen to be, if you may have noticed, Pakistani American, South Asian American. When you are the children of Asian immigrants, South Asian immigrants, there are expectations that you are born into, expectations of success. And my father used to talk to me about that. He used to say, I knew growing up, I knew when you boys were growing up, you were going to be successes. And he'd tell me this story about how he would be sitting there inspiring my older brother. He'd say, I would talk to your brother Shabi. I would look him in the eye and say, Shabi, you are the best. No one can stop you. You can do anything you want. Then he'd look at me and say, and you would be sitting next to him, so you'd hear it too. So it was inspiration by osmosis that got my start. Of course, Varun knows this. To be South Asian and to be successful means to be a physician, right? And it turned out of the 3 kids in my family, only one of us became a physician. In Varun's case, I think he's the only one who didn't become a physician, which is part of what keeps him humble still. But to be South Asian is to see success as being an engineer or to be a physician or an engineer, preferably a physician. There came that point in my life where I looked at my parents in the eye and said, Mom and Dad, I don't think I'm gonna be a doctor. I don't think I have it in me. I can't stand the sight of blood, and I don't like math, and so on and so forth. I'm gonna be a writer. And they looked at me with those eyes filled with love and disappointment. They swallowed hard, they protested at times, and then ultimately they said, okay, but if you're gonna do it, just be the best. Whatever you're gonna do, be the best at it. Be really successful at it. Of course, that still puts pressure on me. What does that look like? Being a really successful writer here in Los Angeles. I think you know the saying that throw a rock anywhere in LA and you'll hit a writer. So please throw that rock hard. See, everybody's got their screenplay, everybody's got a novel, everybody's got something. And there I was, at first writing for many other people. I've had a chance to use my skills within my Trojan academic community over 30 years, and it's been terrific. The chance to really work with some incredible mentors over the years, people like Warren Bennis and Bryce Nelson and Stephen Sample and Martha Harris and Max Nikias, amazing people who've really helped me along, including a lot of great colleagues, including many of you here in this room. It's been incredible. At the same time, there's that aspiration. Maybe I'm going to make it big in my own name, not just writing for other people, but writing for myself. And what does that look like? After 9/11, there were some opportunities for me to do some writing about what was going on in South Asia, what was going on in the Muslim world, what was going on in this clash of civilizations, and I got a little bit of minor notoriety. The question was, how do you go from minor notoriety to major notoriety? And at times I'd have to sit there and think to myself, what am I willing to say to get attention? And I had a lot of editors who told me, look, son, you got some nice ideas, but you're way too moderate. Your opinions are just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You always see the other side. You can't just sit around seeing the other side all the time. Forget one of the sides, pick one side and start swinging. We don't care if you go liberal or go conservative. Go to one of them and start punching the other side hard. That's how you will get a tribe. That's how you'll get a following. There was also that idea that, what about religiously? I could be all over the map at different points religiously. And the idea was that if you shift your direction subtly and go in this direction or that direction and then pronounce that the other side sucks, you have a chance to actually get a lot of attention. I would think about that. I'd realize, yeah, this could be the difference maker. This is the one that gets me on TV. This is the one that gets me the book deal. This is the one that makes me a success. But at what cost? Is it a cost I'm willing to contend with? At times, I could not bring myself to do it. Now, I don't want to sound like a saint. I did whore myself out at times. I wrote a piece for the Wall Street Journal in which I blamed the mortgage crisis on the little guy, not on Wall Street. I kind of felt that way. I don't feel great about it, but it got me three spots on Fox Business Network. It was a minor success. And maybe it could be more successful if I whored myself out a little bit more, but I'd all sit there and deal with the lines. How do you figure out what is real and authentic to you? How do you come up with a success that really represents who you are versus you playing a role? And one of my great mentors, Warren Bennis, our great leadership guru, had a fantastic line which sticks with me a lot. The idea about how there are people who are trying to express themselves and people who are trying to prove themselves. And there's a huge difference. It's subtle, but it's immense. That there is a person who says, this is who I am. This is what I got to say. This is my voice. I'm going to express it. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, that's okay. Then there's that person who has to prove himself or herself. He has to be listened to. And frankly, because of that, if it gets to that point where he's not listened to, he might change his message. Now, that's a dilemma for me. For any writer, for any artist, for politicians, people in every dimension, right? Because when I decided I was going to be a writer, I realized that there was a distance between what I wanted to say and what you were willing to hear. What I was willing to write and what you'd be willing to pay to read. And a couple years ago, I did a little memoir because I thought it was hugely timely. It was talking about growing up Pakistani American during this whole clash of civilizations. And I got it out there, and I thought this could actually get some attention, helping illuminate what's going on with this big clash of civilizations. And when it came out, and when I looked at the book sales ultimately, I could only conclude that I was perhaps 50% less interesting than I thought I was. And that was confirmed at some point when my mother finally read the book, and she said, she read it, and I said, so what'd you think, Mom? And she said, I laughed, I cried, but mostly I was quite bored. So I might re-release the book again in some other form, and I'll probably use that quote on the back. But there's that issue of how much are you willing to change your message just to get the audience. So I love Warren Bennis's purification motive in there. Are you writing something to express yourself or to prove yourself? Trying to prove yourself leads to a lot of problems. merely being content to express yourself can be great. So it brings up the issue of happiness. Can you be successful and happy? Because not everybody who is successful is happy. And I was talking about this a couple of years ago to a friend of mine, Laura Robinson, who's a therapist up in Monterey, and just a terrific thinker about the human condition. And we were talking about happiness and what kinds of successful people are happy. And Laura said to me, go get this book called Cradles of Eminence and look at this book because it's a study of the lives of hundreds of leaders, people from Mother Teresa to Hitler to FDR, on and on. And she said, there's actually a common theme I find in the book, which is if you look at the lives of people who really felt a need to make a difference, to change the world, they actually typically, on average, had unhappy childhoods, unhappy and not well-adjusted childhoods. And somehow that created in them this emptiness, this void, which they could only fill up by trying to do something huge on a cosmic scale. I think Steve Jobs is a great example of an unhappy guy who said, I'm going to make a dent in the universe. And of course, the downside of wanting to make a dent in the universe is the universe probably makes even more dents in you along the way. So what Laura told me was that, yeah, it's the unhappy people who are trying to change the world. And I said, what about the happy people? She said, the happy people are the ones who are usually content to work an honest day's work and then go home at 5 or 5:30 and throw the ball around with a kid. And that somehow they suspect that is as good as they can do in their lives. That's the best impact they can really make in terms of being immediately there for those people who really need them. It got me thinking about the whole issue of one's own funeral. When Steve Jobs died, roses, tributes, everything pouring out all over the world. People saying, now this was a man who made an impact. This is a man who really changed things. Now, I look at my phone and I think, yeah, I had a phone, before Steve Jobs came along, I had a phone that did email and could get on the web. After that, I had a phone that could do that and looked a little prettier. In the meantime, he was a pretty unhappy person. Many people say he was an asshole, but he was considered high impact. But it brings up the question about when the successful person has his or her funeral, who is saddest at that funeral? Who's saddest about their loss? Is it the people in the immediate circle, or is it those people who outside in distant continents and future generations who create a mythologized version of that person, who never really knew that person, but they've just decided they were special? And meanwhile, those people who were in the immediate circle, the kid who wanted to have the ball thrown around with, and those people are busy doing the therapy and so on and so forth, and perhaps the unhappiness perpetuates. So I'd have to wrestle with myself and think, what does that mean to find success with a meaningful amount of happiness? And it reminds me of something that Henry Nouwen talked about, the great Catholic writer. He was talking about how at our core, we're not all looking for success and recognition. Maybe at some vain level it seems that way, but at our deepest human level, we're not looking for success and recognition. We are looking, all of us, for communion, deep communion. And he said, look at the Olympic athlete who's trying for the gold medal. Look at the politician trying to win an election. Look at the writer trying to write the best-selling book. Look at all these people in different realms. Why do they want that gold medal? Why do they want that? Why do they want that to win that election? Why do they want some other sign of recognition? Because ultimately it's about belonging, our need to belong, and not just to belong in some way, but to belong in some special way, to know we're cherished. We've found our place within the greater cosmos. And what Nouwen was saying was that the paradox is that frequently you don't have to win the election. You don't have to write the best-selling book. You don't have to win the gold medal in order to actually experience that communion. It can come from other things too. I value my family a lot. I have 3 terrific nieces and 1 nephew. I'll talk for a minute about my nephew, Nicholas, that he and his twin sister, Natalie, were born about 6 years ago in Orange County. And I'd go down there, spend a little time, hold the babies, and so on. And then I'd get back out to my life and worry about how I was going to be a success. And once in a while, I'd go down there, put in some time, come back. And then at some point there, the family was going through a bit of a tough patch, and I realized, okay, I could actually add something to his life. And he was getting very attached to me. He really enjoyed hanging out with me for whatever reason. And I'd say, I got to go. He says, no, stick around. You know, he'd be 2.5 years old, chubby cheeks, bright eyes, and he'd say, don't go, don't leave, stay. And I think, I guess maybe it's good for me to really spend some time here, even though I also want to get back to my life and my obsessions and my dreams and this and that and my errands. Then I'd start to spend more time. I'd say, okay, maybe I'll stay over Saturday night sometimes. Then I'll throw the kids in the car the next morning. We'll run off to Starbucks and I'll get my cappuccino. They'll get their little vanilla steamer or their latte. And I'd try to do that more, spend a little bit more time, feeling like I was doing that, but also needing to make sure I was worried about my own life. Then one time, Nicholas says to me, he says, are you staying tonight? I said, no, I can't. He says, why not? And he's about 4 years old by now. I said, why not? I said, I just got a lot of stuff to do. I got things to do. He says, oh, okay. And he was sad. He was just quiet and mopey and sad. And I was touched by that. Somebody likes me enough to mope when I leave. And I just looked at him pouting, and I said, hey, Nicholas, tell you what, when you're grown up, you should come up to L.A., and you and me, we can work at USC together, and we can go have lunch every day. And his eyes brighten up. He just says, really? He says, okay. I said, good. He says, and dinner too? I said, sure, we can. Lunch and dinner every day. He says, and breakfast? I said, sure, breakfast, lunch, dinner every day, yes. And he was so happy to hang out with, to be able to spend the rest of his life with his uncle. And I sat there and thought, I guess this is what matters. I guess this is a kind of success and a kind of recognition, because frankly, if I actually invest my time well, I can write what I want and do all those other things, put out books that people may or may not read, put out articles that people may or may not care about. But if I focus on the things that count, then frankly, in the case of, say, someone like Nicholas, he has that chance some years from now to be that happy, well-adjusted guy who puts in an honest day's work and then goes home and throws the ball around with his kid. And that should really matter. That should really matter to us. I might get lured into something else. I might, the call of the media whores might be too much for me to resist. I might go off and make an ass of myself and seek fame and fortune. But I think you and I know that ultimately, when it comes down to what really matters, it's something beyond our normal views. It's something beyond what society tells us, and it's something that really involves those people we are closest to. Thank you. Comments, angry denunciations, questions? Lots of free food in the back. What do I think of when I read obituaries? Well, hopefully as a writer, there's less competition. I think that I don't know what to think about obituaries. I try not to put too much stock in them, because when I look at obituaries, and also when I look at statues, there are a lot of people who are out there trying to live their lives in such a way that they get a statue made of them, right? And you can't control that. Want to jump to the microphone? So, yeah, in a way, society keeps score through those things like the obituaries. And what you can't control, though, is how society is keeping score. The scorekeeping changes over time. And a person who is obsessed with proving himself is that kind of person who would love to see a statue after he or she is dead. And it's kind of hard to see a statue after you're dead for some obvious reasons. But you also don't know. You might be a great person or not, worthy of the statue. Sometimes it just has to do with society puffing people up. And I look at some people who have airports named after them. Maybe they deserved it. In some cases, maybe they didn't. But society just decided they needed to memorialize them because society needs heroes. We can't set out to be a hero. And you almost have to just wait and see how it works out. Sir.
So you were raised with the idea that being a physician engineer is the mark of success, and what you've shared today is a little bit different from that. It's more of an internal or inner success. Have you shared this with your brothers and your mother as well? And what are their thoughts? If so, how do they feel about it?
I think my mother is aware that I could probably still maybe get into USC med school and turn this thing around. I think at some deep level she would agree. She would say, yes, that's great. Now, right? People are driven by what they're driven by, especially in certain cultures. And that idea of being a doctor is prestigious. And this isn't just to make me feel good as your mother or your father. It's for your own sake. It's so people get out of your way when you walk in the room and you say, I'm a doctor. The dilemma is that if Pakistanis around the world, everybody would be operating on each other because we'd all be doctors. No, I don't even know who the nurses would be. Like maybe the Indians. Sorry. My mom used to say that my older brother's Shabi, my younger brother's Furhan. And one time she was describing to my sister-in-law, she said, yeah, growing up, Shabi was the most ambitious, Furhan was about right, and Robbie was the least ambitious. So the funny thing is, within my family, I think I'm very driven for recognition and success, and that I have to stop myself by trying to say out loud that that's not the biggest thing for me. What matters is my nephew and so on. I think my brothers are probably, well, I don't want to speak for them. I think they probably see me as a little bit more of a hippie who isn't necessarily focused on the normal success measures. Carolina.
Hi, Rob. Hi, Varun. So I have a question regarding, you mentioned you kind of have shifted positions, maybe controversial, not popular, more moderate, and you have this flexibility or tolerance of kind of moving between blurred lines. And it sounds like in your writing you've kind of placed yourself in those positions and decided, which way am I going to go? What are the editors saying? How do I respond? So I'm just curious, in your positions over the years at USC or the folks that you've worked with in these high-level leadership positions, oftentimes there's decisions that have to be made that aren't the most popular, and you have to wait and see what happens. So have you, rather than putting yourself in that position of which way do I go or where do I stand, how have you responded to stuff rolling down, and here you are, and if you are conflicted with something or you oppose or you just don't feel that commitment to it, how have you dealt with that?
Things happening in the USC space. Sometimes you just have to keep your mouth shut, right? That when you it is a tricky business in terms of being, if you want to be a blowhard, you want to be a pundit, you want to be somebody who says what's on your mind, and then other times it's not your place to have an opinion. And what I do to put food on the table for myself generally is to help other people say what they're trying to say. So what I have to do is align myself with people who I fundamentally agree with, who I fundamentally find myself in sync with in terms of values. And if there's a discussion, one of my roles is to perhaps state my opinion. I might have said to a Steve Sample in some context, here's what I think you should do in this situation regarding your book. And that's a great idea, Rob, but hell no. And then you just move on. If there's an issue about here's what USC is doing, I'm sure I'd run things differently because I would run things differently from anybody who's in charge. We all have our own style, but part of working in a position like mine is to realize you're there in a support role, and then frankly, if it's that much, then you go home, your head is going to explode because you feel like you want to write something that's counter to what USC is doing, then you're probably in the wrong job. What I like is the fact that it's an incredible community. It has been over the years. That again, 30 years here, working with people like Max Nikias, who I think is one of the best, maybe the best college president in the country at a time when this place is growing really fast. And Steve Sample is one of the best presidents in the country who really got us in a position to get to a really special rung on the ladder. And just fantastic people in a lot of different ways. So for me, it's very important that I be here and have this, enjoy the privilege of supporting folks like that as they do their thing and as the Trojan family does their thing. I was born in San Jose. San Jose, yeah. Born in San Jose, but we moved around constantly. We spent time in Bangladesh, I guess when it was still East Pakistan. Spent time in Tehran. I was there in '74 or so when the Shah was still in power. And Lahore in Pakistan and Islamabad, and also Uruguay. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And a whole bunch of other places. We moved constantly. My dad was an engineer who took a lot of overseas jobs, and so we moved almost constantly. That made me, I guess, multicultural.
Could you talk about the process of coming back to the U.S. as an immigrant and the acculturation process and what that meant, especially at that time, coming from Iran and Pakistan, moving to the U.S., and what that meant for your own self-identity and religious identity and all that?
Yeah, in terms of the context of moving back to the U.S., my family was in Pakistan in '79, '80, and during a time of incredible chaos there, when the Pakistanis burned down the American embassy, and all of my American school friends all got chased off home. They got evacuated, and a while later I came back here. It was still during the Iranian hostage crisis, so there was a lot of tension in the air in terms of what's happening with this crazy part of the world. And 30 plus years later, it still hasn't settled down. It was hard in a way to be American and yet not American, to come back here in 1980 and be trying to go to the Miller's Outpost and find the right cool clothes. And I bought these jeans. They were bootcut jeans, and apparently nobody wore bootcut jeans anymore, but Miller's Outpost still sold them for some reason. So there I was at school wearing my hip bootcut jeans, which nobody else was wearing. Sometimes it takes a while for me to get things, and I realized that about a year or two later that nobody else is wearing these jeans. I'm still mad at Miller's Outpost, whatever they became, for selling me jeans that apparently were out of fashion. But so a lot of it was this trying to figure out how does this work? How do I fit in? How do I try to get the right look and become Americanized and so on? And it was a challenge. At some point by my senior year, I thought I really got it figured out. I got the hair just right. I got the outfit just right, and then the styles changed again, so I was screwed. So it was always a matter of trying to find my American identity while sometimes trying to find sometimes trying to make peace with my Pakistani identity. Tori.
I want to ask you, you've obviously worked with a lot of great leaders through your tenure here at USC. You have also been a great leader yourself. Can you talk a little bit about your next book that's coming out that is on leadership?
I didn't pay her to say that either. Leadership is Hell. It's a book which started out looking at management and how management is a pain in the ass that many people don't realize might not be the thing for them. There are college professors who probably would do well to stay in the laboratory rather than become an administrator. And who knows, if they stayed in the laboratory, maybe they become a Nobel Prize winning professor and that'd make them happier. But then there's others who really want to make a difference by becoming a manager slash leader. And so I was trying to look at some of those issues. What kind of role is important in your life? And in terms of my own life, should I be a writer who sits there and comes up with big ideas and bloviates about them, or should I be a line manager and things like that? What really makes you happy? Along the way, I started looking at larger issues such as what is true success then? For some people, true success is to be, well, for most people, they think success is to somehow be listened to be recognized, to be seen. And the challenge is, what's the right way for you that allows you to really be who you are, to grow in the way you're going to grow, and not just fall into the trap that some people fall into, which is trying to climb up a certain ladder. And my hope is that with the book, it will, by the time a person finishes it, they'll have a better sense of what their ladder is, instead of just assuming that it's to be number one within whatever organization. And again, how do you define number one also? Tim.
So what's your favorite Led Zeppelin song?
Oh boy. 10 Years Gone. And I listened to it about an hour ago to get ready, to relax myself. So I'm trying to think if I thank Led Zeppelin in my new book. Oh, I think I do. So any other questions? We have a lot more food. I think we have food still. And is Verona giving any closing announcements? Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Let's just hear it one more time for Rob Asghar. Thanks, Rob. That was great. I want to thank you all for being here. Please sign up for on our newsletter for more information about upcoming events. Please join us for future events. Please grab food as well. And fight on. Thank you.